Thank you very much. Let me first say how glad I am to be present in this assembly, which I think is indicative of how the young people in Kenya and hopefully Africa intend to proceed going forward. But before I say anything, let me acknowledge my fellow platform guests, Jane, Susan, and Jay, with whom we, several years ago, you'll remember this was in the year 2001, when we moved across this country collecting the views of the people of Kenya to give unto ourselves a new constitutional dispensation, which culminated in the Bomas Conference, and ultimately we ended up with the WACO draft, then we ended up with no constitution, then we ended up with the 2000 clashes, then we ended up with the 2010 constitution, which in many ways was a ceasefire document. And I'm happy that we are here to talk about young people. Mwalimu Nyerere of Tanzania used to say in Kiswahili, siri ya maendeleo ni watu, ardhi na siasa safi. And he would say again, siri ya maendeleo ni vijana wenye malezi bora, siha njema na bongo kali. There is a sense in which no society throughout history has realized her potential without her young men and women being in the forefront of development, whether it is political development or social development or economic development. And I keep on reminding young people across the continent to ask themselves, what was the age of those who are in the struggle for independence across the continent? They were youth within the definition of youth now. They were below 35. 90% of them. Below 35. Almost all of them when they started. In every country. Whether you are talking about Kenya, whether you are talking about Tanzania or Uganda or Democratic Republic of Congo or Ghana, they were below 35. And I was reminding a young man yesterday, do you know the age of the missionary normally called Henry Morton Stanley when he came here? He was 24 years. 24. And he sold the entire Democratic Republic of Congo, which is larger than Europe excluding Russia. He's the one who midwifed its passage to King Leopold of the Belgians. 24. Yet, in this country and many African countries, I remember at the university when I was a student leader, and I made a statement at that time when a leader, the late Okiki Amayo, had been appointed to be the chairman of the Kenya Youth Council. And I said, how can a 50-year-old be the chair of the youth when we are 23, 22 at that time? But that is the tragedy of many countries. But as Mzee said, the reason why many of us feel pain is that we have lived in a country and in a continent where we keep on changing and improving the means, but we never improve the end. This is what we do. We started doing it in 1964. We had a constitution in 1964. 1963, our independence constitution, we said it was wrong. The country could only grow economically and politically if we did not have a prime minister, if we had a president. We changed our constitution 27 times. between 1963 and 1969 until we had to reorganize the Constitution and reissue it again in 1969. We promised ourselves, and I so very remember session of paper number 5 and number 10, we would have water in every household by the year 2000. That was our promise, by the year 2000. Right now, if you walk in Nairobi, you see jerrycans even in the center of the city. You don't need to go far. You just need to go to Marikiti. Here you find mikokoteni, hand-drawn carts in the 21st century. Hand-drawn. Yet the City Council bylaws say that we should not have hand-drawn carts in Nairobi. We have them moving from Marikiti to the market next to Aga Khan. I remember as I grew up in Nairobi in 1970s and 80s, the city had garbage collection every Monday and every Wednesday and every Saturday. And I remember as young people singing Kamero na Kauti na Kagoro Kamwe. And they collected it. I remember free hot lunch being served here in Nairobi. I'm not talking about New York. I'm talking about Nairobi, Kenya. And the lunch was being made at the City Council kitchen next to Pumwani Maternity Hospital. Nairobi used to function, so they should not tell you they are improving Nairobi. They are trying to go back to the past. I remember City Park here was an outing for people, and people had boats there, and there was the park in the inn. That was Nairobi. So there is a sense in which things have gone down. I remember when we were young and we were Form 4 students during the holidays, you could go to industrial area and get a job and be paid 100 shillings as a Form 4 or even a Form 2 during the holidays. It happened. We lost the plot somewhere. This history and this context is necessary that it may inform how we are going into the future. Today, Abdullah here tells you, even as recently as 1985, 86, when we were graduating from the University of Nairobi, you left the university, you left Form 4, you left even Form 2 after Kenya Junior Certificate, and you got a job. And you didn't need to know anybody. There was no technical know-how. It was technical know-how. Yesterday, a lady, a widow from my rural village, rings me and tells me, my son went to Russia for 7 years and has a master's degree in geothermal studies. He came back 7 years ago, not a job. Holder of a master's degree, not a job. And he's just, there are many of them like that, PhDs, no jobs. And yet, despite the best intention of the governments that we have had, whenever we think we have a solution, a new wound appears, which means there is something that we are not doing right. We are going to the lake to look for fruits and climbing trees to look for fish. That is our problem. Until the day that we are able to diagnose our problem and to prescribe the right medication, will be within the Yamo. These policies that people sit in verified AI in government offices, sometimes sponsored by donors, will come with one-size-fits-all solution, is, I'm trying to look for a good word to say a nasty thing, but I can't find it. It's nonsense. It's completely nonsense. The assumption, as my good friend Susan says, that everybody will be a business person when you give them 50,000. That is complete nonsense. And the people who are telling you that, no, it's nonsense. And we should call them out. And what people do, out of 10 young people, you give them that 50,000, only 2 will possibly have a testimony. Only 2. Then you create all these funds, Uwezo, youth, and each one of them is run by bureaucracies. The cost of running the bureaucracies is sometimes more than the money that is available for distribution to young people. And I'm suggesting, despite their best intention, the intention may be noble and good, but you are not about to solve the problem through that avenue. The problems are going to be solved by conscious recognition that the things we are trying to do have been done elsewhere unsuccessfully. Go to the Scandinavian countries, to Denmark, Norway, and Finland. See how they are dealing with their young people. See how they are dealing with their women and women affairs. There is this fiction, and I call it a fiction because it is a fiction. The women have 10% allocated to them. That youth have 10% allocated to them. It is the same mandarins who take young men and young women and use them as fronts. But the truth is, they are the ones who are trading. So, that history notwithstanding, you must look to the future. And the future is you. Future is you must seek that which you want. Mtaka cha uvunguni, sharti ainame. We have become a country of praying and fasting. You know this nonsense that you see with these quacks who are misrepresenting Christ particularly. Christ is the most represented human being on earth, deity on earth. They don't do that, the Prophet Muhammad. I'm telling you to pray for your business to be successful. How can it happen? In that way, of course, God is ever immanent and present, and he helps those who are working hard. If you believe in him and you do things, talking about entrepreneurship. Look at Uber. Somebody wanted to interview me about Uber from the United States. I just didn't respond because I hate Uber. Why should somebody be sitting in the United States of America? He has not a single car. Makes money. Is there not a group of young men and women who can have that application? And we have our own application that is Kenyan made. Isn't there? Is there not a single university that can do that for us? Isn't there? Is that not the kind of entrepreneurship that we need in the context of the 4th Industrial Revolution? And then what you do is to go to government and say, we are not going to fight competition. This is the global world. But if Uber wants to operate here, we are going to make them pay 2 times the tax to protect our local market. That is the kind of policy that I want to see in government. That is the kind of policy that I want to see to help you in that level of entrepreneurship, so that you are part of the policy making and the implementation of the laws. Look at the arts. Arts. The day before yesterday, I met a young man who was a student at the University of Nairobi. He came to our office, our foundation office, and he tells me he's a comedian. And he has mastered the speech that I make. He recites them word for word. He sent me music this morning. That young man is a talent that should be nurtured. Trevor Noah is a multi-millionaire in dollar terms. What infrastructure facilitates. And he's an employer of many. My friend Nabuki, Churchill. How many has Churchill grown? Nobody helped Churchill. There was no deliberate effort. The government should do that. Churchill is the kind of person that you give a loan of 50 million at no interest at all to nurture talent and to create talent. That is in the arts. Look at cinema. My friend Charles Bukeko went to be with our Lord only recently. Papa Shirandula. How many did he create? Jalango, Wilbroda. I remember when we were young, we were talking about Mzepembe, Othorongo Mwakatwende Danger, Ojwang, the Nyuka quarters of this world. In other parts, there's no difference between Nyuka Quarter and Desire, Washington. No difference. There is no difference between Wilbroda and Beyonce Knowles. It's only the infrastructure. There is no difference. In fact, I think they are better because they are not even scripted. They are people who just learn. And I'm saying that there is no shortage of young people in the arts who can do that. And you can go into very many areas, but what is it going to take? Look, on Sunday, we went to visit a friend of mine, Mzee Dauda, here in Lavington in what is called urban agriculture. Urban agriculture like this is planting sukuma wiki and onions in Lavington. You can do it in your own house, just 2 sacks. You plant them at levels of 1 week, 2 weeks, so that you have sukuma wiki, which you want ambazo zimenyunyajita. Agriculture. You know, Koigi Wawa Mwere has written a book which I genocide in Kenya, the curse of it. And he says that the problem of young Kenyans is that they have been hypnotized by low voltage ethnic to be further to uplift you economically. At least 50 people to bring the spiritual angle. You read the Holy Quran. Arab Muslims have read the commentaries of Abu Hurairah, the lover of the cat. How many of you here? Apart from Zay, I know he has. If you read Hurairah and the Sunnah of the Prophet and the beginning of Islam, during the Hijrah, while he was running to Medina, I'm using this to talk about tenacity. When you have a course, follow it with tenacity, morality. Even when you are an entrepreneur, you must be ethical. You know, I see thieves in this country, and there is no shortage of them. Many of them. I was just telling somebody this morning, I have about 16 acres of land in my rural village, and I can't fence it. Somebody has 10,000 acres. What do they want to do with it? So, as you get into entrepreneurship, remember to be effort for everything that you do. I said I was going to be spiritual a little. If you are a Christian, how many of you read the Bible properly? Very few of you. Even if you don't believe, just read it as a storybook. There is great wisdom to be gleaned there. And there is a person called Paul of Tarsus who is a disciple of Christ. He says, those who do not work should not eat. Labor. Labor. And you use what you have. I'm going to refer you as Christians to three references in the Bible. The one is to be found in the book of 2 Kings, the encounter between Elisha in the Bible and a widow. And the widow goes to Elisha and says, as man of God, I do not have anything and the debtors are coming to me. Then Elisha asks, what do you have? He says, I have some little oil. And he says, go and get all the vessels from your neighbor, and below and behold is filled with oil. And the Bible then records that she sold it and remained with some to live on. God uses what you have. The other reference that I'm going to make to you is to be found in the book of Exodus. The story of Moses when he is on top of the mountain of God. And he is a reluctant leader. God tells him, I want you to go and free my people in Israel. He says, but no, Lord, you know, I am a stammerer. I am not eloquent. Pick somebody else. Pick Aaron, my brother. Then he tells him, and what do you have in your hand? Say, just a rod, like the nomads would have, just a rod because they were nomads and shepherds. Down. And it turns into a snake. And I remember that rod in the dramatization of the film Ten Commandments, which there are many 10 Commandment movies, but I want you to watch this one. The movie 10 Commandments, 1956 by Cecil B. DeMille, with Charlton Heston as Moses. When he goes back to Egypt, he tells the Pharaoh, you'll bring us, Ramses III. He tells him, this rod that you sent me away with is the rod that now makes kings bend. God uses what you have, the rod. And the last one is to be found in the book of Matthew, at chapter 4, verse 23. It's also to be found in Mark and all the Gospels. It's the only miracle in the Christian Bible that is recorded in all the Gospels, from Mark to Matthew to John. And it is the story of the feeding of the 5,000. When they had withdrawn and then they were fed, Christ did not ask for manna to be rained from heaven. He said, is there somebody with something? And a boy emerged. His disciples said, there's a boy here with 2 fishes and 5 loaves. And we are told that he fed them. Those of you who are praying for manna, the kitchen where they used to make manna in heaven was closed. They no longer make manna. So I'm saying to you, as I conclude, that the talent that you have is critical. Susan said something. What is your generational ambition? What do you want? A friend of mine called Dauda works with me in other places in the slums. Whenever he talks to people in those areas, he asks the young men to list 10 of their problems. List 10 of your problems. And they are quick to list them. 10 times they have a solution to the problems. The problem with African governments is that they don't ask people that. They think they know your problem. They think they know solution to your problems. And 9 out of 10 times they fail. I'll conclude with a good example, which is a good example of monumental failure. There was a man called Geoffrey Sachs. He was around the world talking about millennium villages. Did you hear about them? During the days of the Millennium Development Goals, he came up with millennium villages. One of the millennium villages was a famous place in Nyanza in game called Barsauri. And they built hospitals, they built many things, and during the period when they were there, it looked like it was successful. You go to Barsauri now, dead. Dead. Because it was a donors program. It did not come from them. Lazima iwe na chimbuko kutoka kwako. Jishinde ushinde, we say in Kiswahili. Jishinde ushinde. It is when you conquer yourself that you are going to be able to do this. So today, this is the day when you must now go. And I'm still on the spiritual dimension. You know, when the Prophet went to be with the Lord, Islam was a very little religion. Really, very little. Those of you who know, and he does. And he'll tell you how in the first years after the after the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, there were how many fitnas? Those of you who have read the Muslim, how many fitnas? When they were fighting Abu Bakr, Ali, who is to take over from the fitnas. But after a short while, because they were disciples who believed in the word, the message is alive today. Alive today. The message is alive today. So look at yourself as disciples. When Christ died, from a human perspective, Christ was a failure. A monumental failure. In fact, his disciples had gone. Peter, everybody had gone. Are you not a stranger? Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem? Did you not hear of the great teacher who came and was a worker of wonders, and that he was crucified? And then, somehow, as they are resigned, they are walking on their way to Emmaus. A third man appears, and they are telling him, are you not a stranger? They do not know they are talking to the Christ. There'll be those who will doubt, like Thomas, who say, but he's resurrected, and then they go into the day of the Pentecost, when cowards become men of valor, 120 of them, and the world has never been the same again 2,000 years later. So this thing that we are talking about is intergenerational. So, young men and women present here, if you come to Mandera, if you are going to Mandera, go and change. It starts from your village. This idea that you are going to change the whole world, that is romantic. Change your village. Just change your village. And when you begin, if we all begin to change our little villages, our counties will change. And if our counties are changed for the better, then Kenya will change. No, I was very glad when Mzee talked about masks. When I saw people in Kitui beginning to make masks, no, that is level 1. When I saw people in Rivertex beginning to make masks, I was happy, because once we have started making them, then we can begin to talk standards. Then we become international standards. And you are the ones who are going to make it happen. This young man here and my good friend Nene, these are men and women. The young man here, and I know he's been doing monumental things in Migori, and we have worked with him in my foundation. Young men doing great things, young men and women doing great things. So go out into the groups. Don't remain on the drawing board for too long. Don't lament for too long. Look to the future. The future is bright, but you must make it bright. I conclude with these veritable words of a great lady, Mother Teresa of Calcutta. And this is what she said. When you get into a room and you find it is all darkness, you have two options. To complain about the darkness, and the darkness will never leave. The other option is that you take a candle and light the candle and ask your neighbor to light the candles, and lo and behold, the darkness will be conquered. So today, light your candle. If it is the candle of agro-business, light it. If it is the candle of fattening animals in Kajiado and selling them in Dagoretti, light your candle. If it is the candle of coming up with an app so that we can have our own Uber, light that candle. If it is the candle of opening a hair salon and telling our ladies to stop wearing hair from dead women in Europe and America, please do so. But light your candle, and it shall be well with you. And if you want to be a leader, I want you to go out. And I'm beginning to talk about women's hair, particularly African women hair. Do you know that dead women's hair, which is imported into Africa, is worth 34 billion United States dollars, bigger than the economy of Rwanda, Burundi, and South Sudan combined? Hair. Who told you that your hair is bad? So light your candle. So ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to now charge you to go and do that which is good and right, to serve this country and to serve it in dedication. And anybody who appeals to your ethnic emotions, reject that person. The God is a God of diversity, and he loves diversity. The birds are blue, the birds are red, the birds are yellow, the birds are green, but they are not quarreling. How can it be that when we are making decisions, we think that people from our villages are the ones who will help us? When you want a driver, you look for a good driver. When you want a maid, you look for a good maid. When you want a teacher, you want a good teacher. When you want a doctor, you want a good doctor. But when you want a president or an MCA, you are looking for some nincompoop from your village. Stop it. Thank you.